Hello and welcome to the Avram Rosenzweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the show. My name is indeed Avram Rosenzweig, and I am delighted to be here with you. And I am deeply, deeply honored to have as my guest today Peter Wylie, who I will introduce formally in a moment. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for the welcome, and it's my pleasure.
Thank you. Today on the podcast, I'm honored to welcome Peter Wylie, a man whose life has been defined by service, by mentorship, and an extraordinary commitment to Canadian boxing. Peter was born in Toronto in 1946. He served as a Toronto police officer for nearly 2 decades, later working as a sheriff's officer and small business owner. In 1972, Peter founded the Cabbagetown Youth Centre, leading it for 10 years and remaining connected to it for decades, eventually being named the Honourable Patron in 2022. Peter is best known for his remarkable 50-year run as head boxing coach at the CYC, the Cabbagetown Youth Centre. His coaching career spans the Olympics, 1980 and 84, the Commonwealth Games, the World Championships, and the women's national team, which he led from 2003 right up to 2007. In 1982, Peter was named Canada's Amateur Coach of the Year. And over the years, he also worked as a referee, a judge, a trainer, manager, promoter, and even appeared in boxing-related films and TV productions. He's been married since 1968 with 3 children and 5 grandchildren. Peter is officially retired, but his legacy is still very, very much alive. Today, we're going to talk boxing community and the lessons learned over a lifetime in and around the ring. Once again, welcome, Peter.
Thank you very much. It's kind of interesting to hear your bio come back at you the way you presented there. Thank you very much. Very kind of you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I often ask people how they feel about hearing their own resume, and some people are kind of squirmish about it. Were you okay with it?
Fine. Very accurate and much appreciated.
So prior to the interview going to air, I mentioned to you that I'm very Jewish and have a very strong affiliation with the Jewish community in Israel. And I mentioned to you that I'd like to read a poem about fighting hatred and fighting anti-Semitism at the top of this interview, and perhaps we can dedicate our words and the sentiment of what we are about to discuss towards the betterment of the world, sending out positive energy.
Absolutely.
The poem's called Against the Darkness. They say that hatred begins as a whisper, a muttered lie, a curled lip, a shadow that thinks it can pass for truth. But we know better. We've seen what silence becomes when prejudice is left to grow. Anti-Semitism, the world's oldest bruise, a wound carried from exile to exile, written in broken glass and burnt books, in names recited in empty chairs. Racism in all its forms, twin storms in different skies, teaching the same old lesson that fears, when fed, learn to speak in fire. There is another story. It begins quietly too, a hand extended, a voice refusing to be bowed, a teacher retelling a shared humanity, a neighbor stepping forward and saying, not here, not now, not ever. We fight not with fists, but with memory and courage, with a stubborn belief that dignity is not a gift, but a right, with the knowledge that every child deserves a world whose walls are built from understanding, not suspicion. And so we rise again and again, like candles against the night, knowing a single flame can teach darkness how to retreat. This is our promise to stand for each other, to speak when others fall silent, to turn history's ache into tomorrow's shield, to say with one unbroken voice, hate will not inherit this world. We will together. What did you think of that?
Fantastic. It's very apropos for what's going on in today's world. The anti-Semitism is right out of control. It's always been there, as long as I can remember, as long as I've been on this earth. It's disgraceful what's going on today, but it's rearing its nasty head again across the world. And unfortunately, a lot of people are just standing by and watching what's going on. I, for one, any chance I get to speak to anybody regarding anti-Semitism, they hear it very clear and loud. I am absolutely appalled at what's going on today with the Jewish population and support them 100%.
Thank you so much. We're grateful for that, and we need such friendship. We really do, and support. You've had some affiliations with the Jewish community and with Israel. You want to tell us about that?
Well, actually, it goes way, way back. I mean, I've always followed boxers, obviously, even when I was a kid. And a lot of those boxers in the old days were Jewish. People like Baby Yak and Sammy Lufspring and Corporal Izzy Swartz and so on, famous people like that. And so I knew of their Jewish background and respected that. And when I started coaching, one of the boxers I had in the gym was a Jewish boxer, and he was an amateur, and he qualified to go to the Maccabean Games. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, but just the same, the contact was there. And then from that, I also had contact with a great guy by the name of Gary Friedman, who is a boxing promoter still today. He's a manager of several professional fighters, and I've had business dealings with him. And he was a member of the Cabbagetown Youth Centre. He boxed himself, and a great guy. So there's been contact all along through my career with Jewish people in boxing.
Tell us the story about you and Menachem Begin, former Prime Minister of Israel. It's a great story.
Well, that was interesting. That's one time when I was working as a police officer in plain clothes, and I was actually involved with the security related to the synagogue that Menachem Begin was to attend, and I was inside on the line of celebrities to keep an eye of what was going on at that particular point. And along came Menachem Begin, and I think that he thought I was one of the celebrities in the line, and he offered his hand to me. I shook his hand, and he gave me a yarmulke, which I still have to this day. And so I keep that as in a treasure place.
Yeah, those are great stories. Great stories. You know, what's fascinating to me is that you've attributed so much of your life towards keeping people safe, securing environments. As an example, you were a beat cop for a number of years down in a most difficult or challenging area in Toronto. And you were also and have been involved in boxing for the last 6 decades or so. Is there a similarity between the two? What brought you to both?
Well, boxing was always in my family. I mean, my father was from Belfast, Ireland. And if you didn't know how to box or fight there, you didn't last too long. But in any case, when we were very young, one of our first gifts at Christmas were boxing gloves. Me and my brother were immediately out in the backyard with the gloves on, and my father being the referee. And so boxing was with us from a very young age. We were always talking boxing. I mean, I can remember as being a very small child, and I had this huge panda bear that I had, and I used to box it. And so it was always in my blood, so to say.
You know, it's very interesting what draws people to boxing. And I did a little research on AI. Have you used AI at all yourself?
No, you know what? I'm afraid to, actually. That stuff scares me. It really scares me.
I understand.
I'm kind of scared for the future, people in general with AI. I mean, but anyway, I'm a Cro-Magnon man when it comes to this type of technology.
I understand, but for now, I'm going to use it for its best, and it provides some great information. As an example, I want to put this by you, Peter. So I asked AI, what draws people to boxing? And here's the response: the courage and the heart of the fighters. People admire the bravery it takes to step into the ring. Does that resonate with you?
That's absolutely true. Anybody who can say that they were a boxer and had stepped into the squared circle and participated, they're in a very rare and exclusive group of people if you actually look at the number of people who actually were boxers, it's very few in the world, and they can be proud of themselves because it's quite a task to become a boxer. To start off with, the training is enormous, and then you're going into a contest where you are actually taking your life in your own hands. It can be that dangerous. If properly done, it is fairly safe, but you still have the possibility of being seriously injured and could even die. So it is quite an unbelievable task to become a boxer and then go through to actually compete.
Now, you yourself were a boxer. You qualified yourself as not being that
Yeah.
great of a boxer, but do you see yourself as a courageous man having the ability to go into the ring?
I wouldn't say courageous. It takes a certain amount of courage. And of course, being interested in boxing since I was a small child, of course, I was going to gravitate to that sport. I was a bit of an athlete overall in all other sports. I played just about every sport that was available to me: track and field, football, basketball, all these things. I was on teams in high school and so on. So, a bit of an athlete, but boxing was my preeminent sport. Wasn't great at it. I tried hard when I could, but had limited experience. Had 13 amateur bouts, and half of those were little junior bouts. And then when I had to give it up a little bit, and then I got into it a little bit older when I got into high school, and I had the rest of the bouts, 5 or 6 bouts, when I was in high school. Carried it on into the police force. And what happened was that ended my career because my name got in the newspaper, and I got called up to the inspector's office, and he said, Peter, I see you were a boxer. And I said, yes. He said, well, it's not allowed on the police force. You have to give that up. It's either you're a boxer or you're a police officer. So that was the end of my career, unfortunately.
It's a peculiar alternative. Like, why couldn't you be both?
You should have been able to do that. At that particular time, police officers were on the tug of war team. They were playing hockey for the police team and so on. But for some reason, boxing was not allowed. I guess they were worried about serious injury, and you couldn't do your job. Well, to me, actually, I think it's a perfect sport for police officers because it gets you in tremendous condition, and you should know how to take care of yourself if you have to in tough situations. So I thought it was perfect, but unfortunately it wasn't allowed. That all changed just a few years later when the City of Toronto was taken to court by the Metropolitan Toronto Police Association, and they lost in all counts. To start off with, they didn't want you to be able to hold down a second job, and they didn't want you to be involved in recreational activities after work, like boxing. And they lost on both counts, but unfortunately, it was too late for me.
There's a couple of other reasons why people are drawn towards boxing. One is the beauty of the sweet science, as they call it. And then, of course, there's the underdog story. Fans love when a fighter defies the odds and rises from nothing. As an example, Rocky Marciano, the son of immigrants with limited amateur experience, became an undefeated heavyweight champion, a true against all odds triumph. That's a big piece, isn't it? The underdog story.
It is. Boxing is the sport of have-nots. It's a sport where the people generally come from poor backgrounds. Boxing is at its preeminent state when times are tough, when people have to, they don't have the employment, they don't have the ability to make a living. And perfect example of that was during the Depression in the 30s. Boxing was at its biggest point in activity. And so that was because of the Depression. People couldn't get work. And so what did they turn to? They turned to a sport where they could make money. And of course, boxing was that.
And then finally, the personal transformation that it creates Boxing changes people, giving structure, it gives discipline, confidence, and purpose. And then, as an example, in your own backyard, countless youth programs like the Cabbagetown Youth Centre have helped kids find direction and self belief through boxing, shaping lives far beyond the ring, right? Personal transformation.
That's absolutely true. That's one of the reasons why I got involved with founding the youth center. I was born and brought up in the area of the youth center,
Yes.
and that is a tough area of town. Cabbagetown always had a tough reputation, a tough area of the city. And when I was working as a police officer in that area, you could see that the recreational facilities were lacking. And that's one of the reasons why I founded the youth center. And of course, I started it as a boxing club because that was my forte. So it took a lot of kids off the street, and the feedback from those kids as they got older got back to me, and they said on many occasions that if it wasn't for boxing and the club, they would have been out on the corners with the gang and got into trouble. And boxing took them away from that. And that was the greatest motivation for me to continue on working with kids in the youth center and in the boxing program. Boxing is a great thing for youth to be involved in at all levels. You don't have to compete. You can be involved in the sport and just train, and it's a great conditioning sport. And if you do compete, it's fantastic too. It tests your mettle. It
Yes.
makes you to become disciplined. And a lot of these kids, it's the first time that they've had to be disciplined. A lot of times they've come from backgrounds or families where it's the first time they've ever heard somebody say, gee, that was good. You can do it. You are good. And I think that meant a lot to them, especially at that stage in their young life.
Peter, I myself worked with people living on the street. I launched a Jewish humanitarian organization in 1996, which is still around. And we work a lot with homeless people and people who are impoverished. We worked around the world in places like
Wow.
Zimbabwe and Guyana. But my point is that working with people who lived on or near the street, the key piece in developing a relationship with them is building trust. And I think when you speak about those young people who came into your club, who showed some success and transformation in life, it had to start with the development or through the development of trust. How did you manage to do that?
Well, yeah, it's called, as you know, mentorship. So that's what happens. To start off with, a lot of kids, they really don't trust adults. They want to be with their own kind. They want to, of course, they want to be successful in what they try. And the thing about training in boxing and getting them involved is two things. Number one, it bridges the age gap to start off with. When they come in the gym, they see me as a coach, but they relate to me as a sports figure kind of situation. I'm not a person who is condemning them or overlording on them. I'm basically there to try to teach them and help them. So you become a teacher. They recognize that. They recognize that when they're in school too. So they understand that situation. But also, as I mentioned earlier, they start to relate to you almost as a mentor or someone
Mhm.
that they can relate to almost as a family person. And what happens is the coach becomes a member of the family. You've noticed this all the time that the coaches are almost on a level of their parents. They become that close to them because they're involved in a highly demanding sport, which can be a life and death situation. So they become very close to their mentors and the coaches. And so there's the connection there. And then also it's important to note that you don't have to be a champion in the sport of boxing to get something out of it. Everybody who attempts the sport gets something out of it. And I've never seen anybody come into boxing that didn't get some positive part in their development as a young person. It is just one of those kind of sports that's perfect for that kind of situation. And it really works well in those tough areas of the city. They found that out with police athletic leagues in the United States, where they go into really rough, tough ghetto areas, and they get an immediate positive response in the community from setting up those kind of clubs.
What do you think it is about training in boxing that helps kids develop?
It's well, start off with a lot of the areas that they set up clubs. They're rough areas. Kids are out in the street and they're competing all the time with each other and with the system. So that what they find in the gym is very apropos to what they're finding in the street. There's conflict, there's a combative situation, there's competition. So they relate to that very quickly. But also there's a very positive side to it. It's not negative. They're not getting the negative situation that's out on the street where they're getting involved with crime and bad situations. It's a positive situation related to what they know themselves, which is combative. So it kind of, if you understand, it kind of melts together.
Do you remember being tested by some of those kids?
Oh, you mean in the way of like challenging me?
Yeah, like, oh, Coach Wylie, yeah, this is garbage. I know how to fight,
No, that was very, very rare situation. I think because number one, they were coming in an atmosphere where they couldn't really push around people.
Mm-hmm.
When you come into a boxing gym, you know these people can fight, and they know how to fight.
Yes,
That's big interesting side of it. So when they come in the gym, they're kind of taken aback. They're not Mr. Big Shot on the corner of the street. They know that they're walking into an atmosphere where the people in there can straighten them up very quickly. So that's that's obviously an aspect that stood in our favor. So I think they also, when they got in the ring and they found out they really didn't know much about fighting.
Yeah.
And they couldn't, in the ring, you got your fists. You can't use your feet. You can't pick up a chair and hit somebody with it. It's just you and the other guy with your fists and gloves on, and maybe a referee's there to take care of things. But basically, it's one-on-one, mano a mano, and that brings them down to earth very quickly.
My father of blessed memory was a rabbi in Kitchener, Ontario. And there were about 250 families in the synagogue. And he was basically the old-timer rabbi, very close with every single family and all their children. And, of course, did the circumcisions and then the bar mitzvahs and the bat mitzvahs, and later on married the kids. But there was an overlap between my siblings and myself and the synagogue children. They kind of came together, that energy. My father was pretty good at doing that. Was there an overlap between the kids whom you mentored and your own children?
No, that's a tough situation, because what happened was, when I founded the youth center and then I got involved, it took me away from my children. Mm-hmm. I got so involved with the youth center that I regretted to this day that I didn't have more time with my children, because unfortunately I became pretty successful very quickly as a coach. And that started to get involved me with a higher level in the sport, taking me in a lot of international trips, and putting me in charge of a lot of teams, and working at a high level when you're in sports like that takes you away from your family. And I regret that situation. So I had one of my sons boxed my middle son, Philip. He became a provincial champion, but I could not involve myself with him training him. And the reason being, obviously, he sees me as a father, but I don't think he wants to also see me as his coach.
Yes. Yes.
A lot of times you'll see that with coaches, father son coaching kind of situation. Often it doesn't work out. They just they can't, like dad's always there at home telling them don't do this or do this, and now they got to hear it in the gym too. So it never seems to work out that way. So I regret that situation where it took me away from my family, and I have to live with that today.
Al Waxman, you remember Al Waxman?
I do, yes. The King of Kensington, yes.
King of Kensington. He told me once that he regretted being away doing his show, and he referenced the holiday of Hanukkah, which is a big family holiday, and you light the candles. That always stayed with me, and I've interviewed some other stars and have heard that from them as well. I'm wondering why it is that we choose our career in that way over spending time with our family. Why would that be?
Well, I can understand there's a difference there. Al Waxman was a professional actor, so he was being paid to do a job. That was his job.
Yeah.
So I can understand his travel situations and so on, and that it was his work. So you can understand that, and I'm sure that he could justify that situation in his own mind. But it was different for me. I was a police officer, and I was busy with police work and going to court and so on. And then there I was going off to the gym and paying attention to the gym and all the people in the gym, taking care of them and running the organization. And how much time did I have for my own family? Luckily, I have a great wife.
Yes.
And she stepped into that breach very, very well. Thank goodness. You know what? I chose really a great person to be my wife. Irishmen are kind of smart that way. If you know about Irishmen, they usually marry later on in life. I didn't marry early on. I married fairly early when I was 22 years old because I know I had the right woman, and she was really sharp, and she could be a matriarch, no problem. So that worked out fairly well for me, but I still regret it to this day, and I'll always carry that with me to my dying day. And so I think that was the difference. Al Waxman, a professional person, and I was not. I didn't make a profession of the boxing. I was running a youth center, so I was a policeman and running a youth center. So that really took me away from my family a lot.
I think that if you had 10 people in a room with us and we asked them, is boxing violent? My guess is the vast majority would say yes. And I want to deal with that in a moment. But before I do that, I just want to talk about the history of boxing to give a context to it. It's been around apparently for 3,000 years. Boxing appeared in ancient Sumerian and Egyptian carvings, showing that the sport was practiced thousands of years before recorded time. It showed up in the Olympics in 688 BCE. And of course, the Roman gladiators had an influence on it. Here's where it gets kind of crazy and fascinating. In the 1700s, bare knuckle came into play in England. Modern boxing began to form in the 18th century. Britain with bare knuckle prize fights, chaotic rule-light battles, often held in fields or pubs. The London Prize, ring rules, the Queensberry rules, and etc. Is boxing violent, Peter?
Oh, yes. There's a violent aspect to boxing, of course. I mean, when two people put on a pair of gloves and they punch each other, that's violence.
Yeah.
But there's no real intent behind the violence. That's the difference. It's not a criminal assault. It's a competition between two individuals. They are punching each other, and that's a certain amount of what you would call violence. But it's been called a blood sport. I think that's unfair to say that. But in any case, yes, there is some violence in it, and some people who participated in the sport. There are some people that didn't play the game, let's say the Marquess of Queensberry rules. They
Yes.
were violent individuals, but a lot of those got very sorted out fairly quickly. As you move up the ladder in the sport and you get against better competition, you get straightened out, especially if you're a thug.
Have you seen that?
Most of the thugs don't get up to the top. It's the real smart guys, the really good athletes, the disciplined people that make it to the top.
Isn't that interesting? Yes.
Very few thugs make it to the top. There's a few, but not too many.
But does the sport ever make you feel queasy? Do you ever turn away?
No, I've never turned away because I'm not afraid of that kind of situation. As a police officer, I've seen a lot of violence. I've seen a lot of stuff go past my eyes. So that doesn't make me queasy at all. I was a professional cut man, so I dealt with all kinds of injuries in the corners and so on. So that doesn't really throw me at all in those situations. No, it doesn't make me queasy, no.
You know, when you take a look at the Canada's resume having to do with fighters, it's pretty impressive for the size of our country. Let's start with a few. Lennox Lewis,
Yes.
quite the fighter.
Yes, quite the fighter. He was a young lad that I believe he was originally born in England. I believe his parents were from Jamaica.
Yes.
And he moved to Kitchener, Ontario when he was about 12 years old. Luckily, he got teamed up with a really great coach by the name of Arnie Beam, who was a national level coach, just a terrific guy. He was the one who was the mentor. He mentored him, and he coached him to the level that he got. So what Lennox Lewis learned from him, he took on into the professional ring. He never really improved after Arnie Beam. Arnie Beam showed him just about everything he needed to become successful as a professional. What he learned was just from experience, but the tools, the basics to make him a champion were put there by Mr. Beam. And this is what happens with amateur boxing, is the coaches that lay the base down for those athletes. That's the most essential part of the sport. If the base isn't there, then the development doesn't really happen. They only go so far, and then they start losing because the proper base was never put in place.
Lennox Lewis was the undisputed world heavyweight champion in his day. He won over Tyson and Holyfield and Klitschko. When you talk about the basis of fighting, being taught the fundamentals and the key points of it, what are 3 or 4 of those things?
Well, the first thing, when a person walks into the gym and they say they want to compete, first off, you have to ask them whether, in fact, what are their goals, and why do they want to take up the sport of boxing? That's the first thing you have to really determine, is what is their idea for the sport. What do they want to do with the sport? A lot of people, when they come in the gym, if they go into a gym and the coach doesn't sit them down and ask these kind of questions, then a lot of times they're not really made for the sport. Okay, you'll see parents coming into the gym with young kids, and they want their sons or daughters to be involved in the sport, but they're the ones who want them to be involved. The child doesn't. Mm-hmm. So I sit them down with the child, and I ask them, do you want to box? Mm-hmm. And if it's the child's idea, and often it is, because they've been watching it on television or whatever, and they want to try it, then that's all well and good. And then if they have the backing by the parents, which is absolutely essential, then we go ahead. And it's the same with adults. What is the idea for you? What is your goals? Why do you want to take up boxing? So that's the first step. And then you go from there to start the training and find out their physical capabilities. Everybody's an open book. Everybody's different. Mm-hmm. You can't just slot them in one slot. If you look at boxers, everybody's different. They are different personality, different character, different styles. So you actually are working with every individual as a different boxer when you're training them. And a lot of times coaches don't do that. They group them in groups, and you can't do that. You have to approach everybody as an individual, especially and try to develop the best aspects that they have working for them in regards to speed, power, and so on. And that's essential. Some people are just not made for the sport, so the coach has to be honest with them. They have to explain to them, and this has been the case with me a number of times where I've told them, yes, be involved in the sport, try it out, maybe even spar and so on. But personally, as a coach, I'm telling you, I don't really think that you're made for competition. Mm-hmm. And you have to be honest that way. A lot of coaches don't do that. They will just allow the person to go on into competition, which can be a bad situation for all concerned.
Do you have a fundamental awareness of balance on your feet? Turning, using your eyes in concert with your fists. You must be very aware of the bodily movements and how they work together.
Oh, yes. I've always been, I guess, a semi-coach when I was boxing myself.
Yes.
I used to sit in the gym after I trained, and I would watch the coaches. When I was when I got a little older, and I watched the coaches when I was a kid. When I first started boxing at Churchill Collegiate, I watched the coaches there after I was training and watching them working with people. So I was interested in that. So you could say I was kind of a student of the sport. A lot of boxers are not students of the sport. They train and they're out the door and that's it. Myself, I would often sit and watch the coaches. So when I got older and I started watching coaches in the gym, people like Teddy McWhorter, who worked with Clyde Gray, a great fighter, George Chavallo. I would sit afterwards and just watch him work with them and how he dealt with them, how he spoke to them. Not so much as what he was showing them, but how he was communicating with them and how he was getting what he wanted from them, physically and mentally. So I would watch that, and I would watch other coaches to see what worked for them. And when I started coaching, I remembered what they did and how they operated. But I would also watch coaches all the time and did right up until the time I retired. I always tell other coaches, you got to steal as much as you can from these other coaches.
Yes,
watch them, steal what they do, steal what works for them. Yeah, and you'll become a good coach. And never think you can't learn. You can always learn. You don't know everything. Nobody does.
Mimicking is a high form of flattery. That's what we say, right? Yeah, I was watching a documentary yesterday on John Candy, which is magnificent and well worth watching. I was in tears at the end of it because he was that one man whom we all loved and all felt close to, despite the fact that most of us never met him. And once he was in a movie and he sat down in the director's chair and the director said, "Hey, that's my chair, John." He goes, "I know, but I want to direct and I just want to see what it felt like." And I thought to myself, there are those people who are actors, but they have a broader view of the movie industry. Same thing with you. You were a fighter, but you saw that one day you'd like to go at it in a broader way.
Well, that just happened the other day with me, actually. I was just at a boxing show in Welland, Ontario on Saturday, and I ran into an older boxer, retired boxer, who I'd worked with on the national team. And she was we were talking about old times, and she was a member of the national team that fought in the first women's world championship in Scranton, Pennsylvania in 2001. And I said to her, now she's coaching and working with boxers in the Kitchener area. And I said to her, "Donna, you're giving back to the sport. I've always told athletes that in the future, you must give back to your sport. Mm-hmm. Okay. You've competed, you've done whatever, but you have to pass that on to other athletes. You have to pass on that experience. You have to become a coach. Give back to your sport." And I was so happy to see her there, and I complimented her for that. And I think she was happy to hear that. And I'm saying, there, look what you're doing right now. And there she was in the corner working with the boxers and passing on her knowledge and giving back to her sport.
You have a unique way of making other people feel good. That's not a tool that a lot of people have. I interviewed a fellow yesterday who worked with Yad Vashem in Israel, the major Holocaust center in the world, as well as the JDC, a major Jewish humanitarian organization. And he told me, Peter, that he lives to make other people feel good about themselves. And if you ask me, what is the fundamental rule of being a great coach or mentor, that is it, I think. What do you think?
That you're right. And that's an interesting thing. That pops a story in my mind regarding Auschwitz. I was over in Poland with a women's boxing team, and we were looking to take a little bit of recreational time aside. We had a day off, and the host of the tournament asked me what we would like to do. And I presented the idea to the team at large to go and see the concentration camp at Auschwitz, because it was very near where we were boxing in Krakow. And to a person, they said, that is a fantastic idea. And so I went to the host and I said, and he said, really? I said, absolutely, they want to go. So we went there and toured the location. Just an awesome, unbelievable experience. Once in a lifetime. I wouldn't want to go back. I've seen enough. In any case, the feedback from the women was unbelievable. They will remember that trip the rest of their lives. The guide who took care of us, I asked her, I said, how do you do this every day? How long have you been doing this? And she had done it for several years. And she said to me, a very, very prolific sentence. She said to me, people have to know what happened here. We should never forget what happened here. And we should also understand that it could happen again. And I remember that to this day.
Thank you for being so supportive of the Jewish people, Peter. Thank you.
Well, it's my humble opinion that they're one of the great races in the history of the earth. I just marvel at how people, such as the Jewish people, can suffer what they've suffered throughout history and still bounce back so strong, so confident. It's unbelievable. I can't say enough about their courage and their abilities. They are remarkable people. If you look at their history, what they've given as a gift to the world, look at the accomplishments that they've done and how they maintain their faith is absolutely amazing. I'm absolutely stand in awe of that civilization.
Thank you so much for that. We need it. If there's a boxing metaphor for the Jewish people and what we've gone through, would you say it was rope-a-dope?
Yeah, and being successful at it too.
Coming off the ropes. Yeah,
that's a good analogy. Rope-a-dope is very good, because they what they've done to the people who've attacked them and handled the systems that have worked against them is a perfect example of boxing analogy there. Rope-a-dope. They just sit back, let you throw your punches, and then they take you out when they have to. And that's exactly what they've done, and they're doing it today, right now, in what's going on over in the Middle East. And kudos to them.
Thank you. I am absolutely fascinated by the fact that you coached the 1980 and 1984 men's Olympic team. 1980 was boycotted, so you never got over there. But you did train people like Sean O'Sullivan, who was an incredible boxer. And what I'm truly, truly blown away by is that level of athleticism that you rose to as a coach. Can you tell us, what is it like to be a coach for the Olympics?
Well, when I first got into coaching, I immediately, as I said earlier, I do that with people, just ask what they want to do with their career. I immediately set goals. And the first goal I set for myself was to become to produce a national level boxer. I wanted a national champion. And then after that, I wanted to produce boxers that go to the Commonwealth Games. And then I wanted to produce boxers that would end up at the World Championships. And then I wanted to produce an athlete that would go to the Olympics and win a medal. And so that was my goals. And so I followed through with all of those goals. And so I'm kind of happy with what I did in regards to that. It was a great trip to do that. And the people I work with, the other coaches I had in the gym, the other people I work with, and of course the boxers, it was just a great situation. They put so much effort and so much discipline. You see, boxing is the tough thing about boxing, especially at an international level, is people don't understand that when the athlete trains so hard and they train so hard for these competitions, I should just qualify that what I'm saying about training very quickly, in that the American Medical Association, who are not friends of boxing in the United States, they would like to see it banned. They went to the 1996 Atlanta Olympics and they did testing on the athletes in the Summer Games. And surprisingly to them, they found out the fittest of all athletes in the games were boxers. And that shocked them. And you really didn't hear a lot of criticism from the American Medical Association after that. I think they got a rude awakening about what they thought about boxing. But in any case, I lost my train of thought.
I'm just fascinated by the fact that you went to the Olympics.
Yes.
It's amazing to me.
Well, the Olympics is quite an experience. I mean, I call it a political circus.
Yes.
Because it is. There's a lot of politics involved in international competition, a lot of intrigue, a lot of corruption. Anytime you have a sport where you have judges that are making judgments by impression, you'll get corruption. And that is certainly the case in boxing. And politics enters into it very much so. There's a lot on the line for these international teams and coaches and officials. And so, unfortunately, that plays a part in some of these situations. And I've seen that in action a number of times. So it can be very frustrating. But for myself, just to get to that level and to actually be involved and step into a ring with the boxer where you're in the epitome of your sport that everybody aims for. And the Olympics is held that way. It actually is not the toughest of all the competitions.
No.
Just to get to the Olympics is tough. But I mean, the World Championships is a lot tougher than going to the Olympics. It really is. It's tougher competition generally. But the Olympics it's the prime sport for the viewing audience. It gets all the publicity. The World Championships, in my opinion, are tougher. But to get to that situation as a coach, it's awesome. You stand there and you look around at a huge crowd. I mean, I've been in places like in Cuba and so on where there was 15, 20,000 people in a stadium just roaring, and you look around and you can't. You got to pinch yourself and say, "Am I really here? Did I make it here?" And then when your boxer wins and defeats a world champion, then you say to yourself, "You know what? I did it.
Yeah.
I kind of did something that I planned for, and I accomplished." And so it's selfish, but just the same, you can say this is something that no one can take away from me.
We were talking before about Canadian fighters. How you and I met was after you had watched an interview I did with Mitch Chavallo, who's the son of George Chavallo, probably the greatest fighter coming out of Canada ever, and one of the greatest fighters, I would say, in history. Never knocked down in 90-odd fights. and you were complimentary about it, and I think you enjoyed it. So I called you and we schmoozed, and I was amazed by your resume and what you've accomplished in life. Let's talk about George a little bit. He was certainly the Canadian heavyweight legend. He was never knocked down in 93 professional fights, fought Muhammad Ali twice, Joe Frazier, Floyd Patterson, George Foreman. He was known for his incredible toughness and heart. George is still with us. He's still alive. Unfortunately, he has dementia. And after I interviewed Mitch, I asked him if I could go down and visit his dad, and he said, yeah. And I did go down, and he's in a senior's home. And I have to tell you something, even though his cognitive abilities are not so much there anymore, Peter, he had that twinkle in his eye. And Mitch said to him, Dad, show him your fists, and he did.
Oh,
And it was both sad but very reassuring to know that George is still around with us, still a big man. He's always been that big. Um, but you know what? He was just a magnificent fighter, and everybody refers to his fights with Ali. Never knocked down, right?
no, never knocked down. The closest he ever got to being actually knocked down was when he fought a guy by the name of Oscar Bonavena.
Yeah, Oscar
He was a
Bonavena.
world-class fighter. He fought for the world title. And I watched that fight, and George got kind of clipped once, and he just kind of lost balance a little bit, and it almost looked like he was going to go down. And I was almost shocked. I just, I thought, oh, don't go down. And he didn't. It was fantastic the way he got his balance back, and he was ready. And he said to the referee, he said, no. He thought the referee was going to make a count, and he said, no, I didn't. And the referee didn't. He didn't count, and thank goodness. But no, George was an unbelievable individual. I remember having a conversation with him about that. I could say I was friendly with George. Wasn't a close friend. He was in our gym a number of times visiting, and he did interviews in our gyms, in gym with Joe Frazier and so on. But I remember talking to him about that, and I think he was of the same mind. He thought that the structure of his head and the brain itself added to that protection, that he believed that the distance between the actual brain and the cranium itself, the bone, was less than the average person.
Mm-hmm.
And that would mean that the brain itself would not move around in the cranium if the head was hit. And this is what happens with boxers, is that inside the head, the brain is on a stem, and as the blow lands, the head will move back and the brain will remain in position for a brief second, a millisecond, but then it moves also, and it will bounce off the back of the cranium or the side, and this could cause some damage, bruising, and so on. He believed that the space between his brain and the cranium was actually less than a normal person, and that would account for the less possible ability of having damage. Now, I brought this up to neurologists and other doctors, and they agreed. They would say this is quite possible that would protect him from damage to the brain itself from a blow. So that was an interesting aspect to it. And George, I watched George train a lot in the gym. And of course, I was watching his coach work with them too, Teddy McWhorter, Teddy McWhorter was a Damon Runyon character.
Yes.
Little stubby cigar, pork pie hat, guy out of Detroit, Michigan. Had that accent, what a guy. Anyway, him and George were very, like on the same level, compatriots. Like they really dug each other. But in any case, I would watch George train, and the things he would do to develop his neck. I remember that. So that was a thing that I always did with my boxers, was I worked on developing a very, very strong neck to support the head. And I thought that was absolutely essential, and I still do to this day. But George would work very, very hard on his neck, and his body. And thing about George was, if you watch George fight, no one attacked George's body. And watch his fights; they were always headhunting against him, which was generally a waste of time too. Although he cut and bruised a lot, but his body was like cast iron. They never attacked his body for two reasons. Number one, he was in tremendous condition, his body. And number two, if they ever drop their hands down to go to his body, they're good. They're going to get knocked out. Mm-hmm. So that was George. He trained very hard.
You told me a magnificent story about how you said to him, George, you got to make a movie about yourself, man.
That's right. Yeah. Well, he was working on the book then. And I said, George, the book is great and I can't wait. But I said, George, you have to do a movie. And he said to me, he said, Peter, he says, I'm working on it. I'm working. Yeah. I said, George, you told me that about 3 or 4 years ago. I said, you're working on it? When is it going to happen, man? I said, you got to get the financial backing because you got a most phenomenal story to be told. Never mind boxing. Phenomenal story of the history of his family and himself in boxing. And when you say about the movie, this is a true story, it's not stretching anything. It's 100% a true story. Somebody has to produce that story. It is a remarkable human adventure of courage and drama. Nothing even close to it. Talk about Rocky. Rocky doesn't,
you're right.
Rocky doesn't come close.
I have to tell you something. His son, Mitch, is a real fine gentleman. He's very, very sweet. He has a beautiful character. He himself taught athleticism in high school. And the way he takes care of his father, Peter, every father should have that in his life. Mitch is an angel. He really is.
Well, that's feedback from how George treated his children.
Yes.
I mean, I seen him kiss his kids. I mean, he'd kiss them right on the lips. I mean, and he loved his children. A family guy. I mean, it's just feedback. It's just feedback that he's getting right now from a child who loves him.
He's getting it back from his son. Yes.
Absolutely. And I seen that interview, and that was a great interview. You did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
And that was a very interesting hour and 20 minutes I spent listening to that.
Thank you. George Foreman's story is not only a victory, but he's had much tragedy in his life as well. The loss of his wife and his boys. You and I talked about the challenges of boxers that many of them are lacking confidence. I think you mentioned to me that it was Nicky Furlano, I believe it was, who asked you if you had any footage on his fights because he had none of it. And you mentioned that, many of them come from backgrounds where they were never spoken to nicely or where they never boosted in terms of their own appreciation of themselves. So I guess boxing has many different dimensions to it.
It does. It also it can attract quite a nasty crowd too. When you get into the professional side of things, not so much in the amateurs. The amateurs is a different world entirely. When you get into the professional side of things and money is involved, then a lot of things happen that are not too sweet. Let me tell you, there's all kinds of wheeling and dealing going on. And to use the term racket is the right term. Professional boxing is a racket. But the nasty side of things happen a lot on the professional side of things, and I've seen a lot of that happen. I mean, a lot of people, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I worked with a guy by the name of Mike Trainer, who was the manager for Sugar Ray Leonard. And so Sugar Ray Leonard was part of the Sean O'Sullivan team. And Mike Trainer was the manager for Sean O'Sullivan. And when I seen what was going on and heard the stories from Mike Trainer, but also seen it myself, of the wheeling and dealing that was going on behind the scenes. And then when I got involved in promoting shows and promoting, I had a team of 13 professional boxers myself. when I seen what was going on with the promoters and people that were involved in the professional side of things, in various places that I would travel to, the things that they would do, the double shuffling that they would do on boxers, the try to wheel and deal with me to cut back on what the boxer was going to get, and you get an extra buck in your pocket, never mind the boxer, and let's work this deal out, and forget the boxer, and let's work this. I got a very bad reputation because I would, and my trainer told me that. He says, Peter, nobody wants to do business with you. You know why?
Yeah.
You're too straight. You're too straight. And so anybody I ever dealt with in the professional side of things as a boxer, I never had a contract with. I never had any contract. It was a word. If you don't like what I'm doing with you, on you go to somebody else. And that's it. And this is the deal we have. This is what you're going to pay to have me train you and manage you. And it was always a fair, nothing like most managers get. But in a lot of cases, I would tell a lot of the boxers too, listen, you don't need a manager. If you're a smart guy and you use your head at this particular stage in your career, you don't really need a manager. You need a good promoter, someone who's going to promote you, protect you, and bring you along very slowly in the sport to get the best out of the sport for you. And a lot of times that isn't the case. They get involved with managers that really rush them along, hustle them along, and put them into a bad situation where they're always the opponent. They never get a square deal, and it ruins their career.
Peter, as I mentioned to you, I've been playing around with AI for a while now, and I've asked AI to produce poems about my guests. So I have an ode to Peter Wylie, and it's called In This Corner, a Legend, and I'd like to read it to you. In this corner, weighing in with 5 decades of grit, steel, and heart, the pride of Toronto, born August 14th, 1946. Ladies and gentlemen, raise your hands, stomp your feet. Make some noise for the man who turned kids into champions and champions into believers. Peter, the mentor, the coach, the heart of Cabbagetown, Peter Wylie. He entered the ring of life early, married in 68, built a family of 3 kids, 5 grandkids, a whole legacy cheering from the stands. A police officer from 67 to 85, walking through tough streets with tougher courage. Then a sheriff in Toronto, keeping order with the calm hand of a man who's seen every punch life can throw. But his true arena was born in 1972, the Cabbagetown Youth Centre, his masterpiece, his gym, his battleground, his heart. Founder, director, 10-year president, 50 years of showing young fighters how to rise, how to think, how to punch without losing their soul. And then the coaching career heard across the country, head coach of CYC 72 to 2022, 1980 Olympic boxing team coach, 1984 Olympic Games coach, Commonwealth Games 1981, World Championships 82-83, Canada's Amateur Coach of the Year 82, National Head Coach Women's Team 2003-2007. If there was a ring, a bell, a corner stool, or a fighter in need, Peter Wylie was there. He trained them, he carried them, he yelled at them when he had to, believed in them when they didn't, built championships with sweat, discipline, and a stare that told you he expected your best. So tonight, in honor of the man, the coach, the guardian of Cabbagetown, lift your hands high for the undefeated, undefeatable, the unforgettable Peter Wylie, the people's champ.
Well, what can I say, Avram? The compliments are unbelievable. Thank you very much. Very kind of you. I think a little overdone. I think there's so many people that have been involved in my career as a coach that made me successful, that helped me along the way. And many times I felt, I should quit or I should go on to something else or whatever. But I had the backing of a lot of good people. And a lot of those people were boxers too.
Yes.
And a lot of people in the sport helped me along the way. So I certainly didn't do it all myself. Without their help, I would not have been as successful as I was in my career. So thank you very much for those compliments, but those other people have to take a bow too.
Peter, I do this show because I want people to be inspired by humankind. That's basically what I say, that it's to pay homage to humankind through inspirational interviews. I really want to reach out to individuals, to people who haven't, as of yet in their life, found that road that you have, the one that makes you feel good, the one gives you meaning, the one gives you purpose, the one that gives you the ability to help others and make people feel good about themselves. So my final question to you is, if you could send out a message to those individuals who are just struggling, and very often every day, in terms of finding what the reason is that God put them on this earth, what would you say to those people?
We're all humans. We have so many faults. We're always learning, and we should always learn. I think you have to have faith, and that faith is it can be in the form of religious faith. It could be in the form of faith for the future. It's hope. And you always have to have hope that things are going to be better, that there is a silver lining to that dark cloud, and that kind of thought. I think if people approach life and they say, and this is what we have as a motto at the Cabbagetown Youth Centre, and this is what I always believed in, and that is, we rise above things that hold us down. We rise above adversity, and that is on the wall of the Cabbagetown Youth Centre. And so I think that would be my motto, and that would be something I would say to anybody, is that don't quit, don't give up, have hope. And if you try and try again, you will rise above whatever adversity you are facing. Humans are unbelievable creatures. We are able to rise above these things that set us down and be successful. And look at the situation that's going on with the situation regarding the Jewish civilization itself. A perfect example of people who have been held down, have been used as scapegoats, have been punished for no reason. And today it's happening again, and they continually rise above adversity. And so that's what I would say to people. Don't give up. You could use them as a perfect example.
Thank you so much. I'm very grateful as a Jew to hear you say that, because as I said before, we need as many friends as possible, and your support and your encouragement means an awful lot to me and to my entire community. Peter Wylie, I want to thank you so much for being my guest today. It really was magnificent to schmooze with you. I just adore what you've accomplished in life and how you've gone about it, and the credit that you give to your wife, to your family, to those people who were with you in the gym and really throughout the world. So well done on your work, and well done on your life to date. And God willing, you should continue to be successful and to bring a lot to the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Abram. And you're right. I have a lot to thank with the backing I had from my family and all the people who helped me along with my career. Thank you, Abram.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank everybody for watching and for listening. If you have any questions for me or for Peter, please feel free to be in touch. You can see my email at the bottom of the screen. Get out there and find your gift, man. If you haven't as of yet, overcome adversity, and you can do that. Maybe boxing is the way to do it for you. or for your child, because it certainly has done it for many, many people. Until we meet again, as my mother used to say, sei gesund, which is Yiddish for go in good health. We will see you again soon. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.